Okay, so let's do this first one. Trying to convince members of a neighborhood to sell their homes because members of a minority group are moving into the neighborhood. This is a fair housing violation. And what do we call it? Is it panic peddling, commingling, steering, or puffing? What do you guys think? Put in the chat what you guys think is the answer to this first vocabulary question.
Is it me, or is it every time you see the word puffing, I think of that old movie Friday, and I think puff, 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 puff.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite movies ever. That is the best movie ever. Yeah.
And I'm showing my age and my inappropriateness.
I watched that again the other night. I hadn't watched it in a long time. Panic peddling. And I forgot that's where the Felicia thing came from. Panic peddling. Now, what is another word, you guys, for panic peddling? Anybody remember another term for panic peddling?
It's in the chat. It's in the answer there.
Yes. The other word for it would be blockbusting, right? Blockbusting, steering, redlining, all fair housing violations, all bad news. We don't want to do that. Bad, 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 right? So panic peddling, I tell you, oh, whatever group is moving into the neighborhood, you should sell your house quick, and I play on your bad thoughts about people. That's panic peddling. Steering, if I get in my car and I steer you to a neighborhood or away from a neighborhood, if you think of steering as like driving, then that's when I'm trying to like put you into a certain location because of your protected class. I think you should live where people that are similar to you live, in my head. Or I should take you away from that neighborhood for whatever reason. That's also a fair housing violation. That is steering. Candice, you want to do redlining?
Yes, redlining is where banks choose where they're going to give loans and where they're not going to give loans based on either the racial makeup or some other protected criteria, otherwise known as a bunch of BS. It is totally illegal, and they cannot do that.
All right, so I'm going to roll through and read off some of these questions too.
And I have one of them ready. Elizabeth asked, in a business, do the fixtures that are bolted in by the business owner, can they take it with them or not? So I think what you're asking about, Elizabeth, is trade fixtures. So let's kind of do an overall view. In general, when we're usually talking about real estate, a fixture is something that is personal property that's been permanently attached to the real property, and now it becomes part of the real property. So think tomorrow afternoon, you go to Home Depot, you buy a ceiling fan. That ceiling fan is personal property. You permanently attach it to the ceiling. It's a fixture. And if I buy your house, I'm expecting that fixture to come with. However, trade fixtures are about commercial renting. Two key words, commercial and renting. If you are renting a commercial property, if you walk by a store or a space where a store can be, and it's really empty, it's just the four walls and the floor. If you decide to rent it, open up a bakery, and you install a giant stove, you bolt that stove into the store that you are renting. Because you are renting, that fixture, also known as a trade fixture, can go with you. When you leave as the tenant, you can take it with you. Keywords, commercial, renting, tenant. If it is owned, then that goes out the window. A fixture is a fixture.
Yeah.
Right? But if it's renting and it's commercial, it's a trade fixture, and trade fixtures can be taken by the tenant. So Let me know if that makes sense. And do we have another question that you want to answer?
I didn't see any other ones specifically that people have put in, except for the one which is like, how long should I study? So I'll let Kandyce answer that one. She has pretty good at making up study plans, but my answer to it always is, I study for an hour at a time. I set an alarm on my phone, and I say, for this hour, I'm going to be all in. And after that, I'm going to get up, I'm going to move around. I never study for more than an hour at a time because I feel like my attention span just isn't there. And I think most people are probably like that. So I do it in 1 hour blocks with my alarm on my phone.
That's actually called the Pomodoro technique, which is a thing. An hour is probably a little bit long for the Pomodoro technique. They usually say 40 minutes or so, but you set your alarm for an amount of time. You do that studying, then you go focus on something else and you come back to it. That's on a individual day-to-day basis. But if you are asking for on this whole process of getting licensed, I look at it in two ways. If you are just the average person and you're just kind of studying, I say about 15 to 20 hours a week. If you have focused in your studying, you have a study plan, you know your studying is effective, I think 10 to 12 hours a week is fine. But it depends, are you getting better? Are you seeing improvement? If you're not seeing improvement, I don't care how long you study, 2 hours or 500 hours, you're not going to pass the test. It's about effectively studying and making sure your grades are going up. All right, so let's get back. Wait, Jennifer said, I have a question regarding the Massachusetts broker national exam. Is there someone that can help you with that? If it's a national portion and it's something that you just want to know, like a word, we can put that in there. Oh, and you already answered that.
I was thinking she meant like a Massachusetts law question.
If
But
it's a Massachusetts law question,
throw it out there.
We'll
If
see.
it's Massachusetts law, then email us about the tutoring stuff. But yeah, if it's national, we would help you with it. Sorry, I misread the question. I was thinking she was asking about Massachusetts law. The only reason why we won't do the individual state laws in the webinar is because we got so many people from so many different states. Okay, a state in which ownership is for an indeterminable or indeterminate length of time, unlimited interest in a property. Is it a state at sufferance, freehold estate, less than freehold estate, or estate for years? This is an indeterminate length of time, and you have unlimited interest in the property. What does that sound like? Estate at sufferance, freehold estate, less than freehold estate, or estate for years. What do you guys think? Cool, I'm seeing some B's. Good job, guys. A freehold estate, yes, absolutely. So if I own it, it's a freehold estate. What is it called if I lease the property? I know that's not the answer here, but on the flip side of that, thinking about it, this topic, what is it called when I lease the property? Remember, that's a leasehold estate, or sometimes we call it a less than freehold estate, right? So we have freehold estate is when we have ownership. We have less than freehold estate is for leasing. What about estate at sufferance? I know that that's not on topic here, but it's one of the words that we're seeing on the screen. Estate at sufferance. If I'm a tenant and I have an estate at sufferance, what's going on there? I haven't paid my landlord. He wants me out. He's hanging around. I'm hanging around and I'm making my landlord suffer. I won't move out and he's trying to evict me, right? I'm a deadbeat. Nancy, that's great. Yeah, it's a deadbeat. That's estate at sufferance. All right, estate for years. So Kandyce, I'm going on here. Let me see. Kandyce, what do you think? Estate for years when we have a drop dead deadline. Like this is the last day of the lease. Get the heck out, right? We don't have that ongoing periodic tenancy where we might renew, we might do another 30-day lease or month to month, we might re-up it for a year. On estate for years, it's like if the last day is June 15th, then they mean it, right? Yeah. So let's see. Next question. All right. Dying without leaving a will. Dying without leaving a will. Is it testate, testated? I feel like we had this one the other day. Intestate or untestate? All right, Kandyce, you want to answer this one? Oh, wait, all of a sudden I couldn't hear you. Kandyce, can you hear me okay? She was muted. That's weird. Okay. Oh, I can't hear Kandyce, but can you guys hear me? So I'll just go ahead and answer this one while we try to get Kandyce back on here. So dying without leaving a will is intestate, right? Intestate. If I die with a will, that's testate, right? Kandyce, we can't hear you all of a sudden. That's very weird. Is it picking up your other microphone? I see you talking, but Kandyce, can you hear me, guys? Can you hear me, Kandyce?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can. Yeah, it went out for me. Sorry, that was weird. Sorry if I was talking over you. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, no, I think it was just weird. It just decided to not.
All right. So now that I can hear you again, talk to us about intestate. What are some things that you can think of with intestate?
Well, I always think of the Intestate Succession Act, or all states have an act that talks about what's going to happen when you die to what happens to your property. Intestate means you die without a will, which relates to a sheet. I think a lot of people miss that in a sheet up. A sheet means you died without a will and you have no heirs, and it goes back to the state. But
Now,
before
okay.
you had said all that, I was going to say somebody asked a question at the very beginning, right before you did the last two questions that I wanted to answer for them.
Okay. Sorry.
And it was, that's okay. No, it's, you couldn't hear me. So
Okay.
it was from Delroy, and he asked, he said he has a hard time with meets and bounds, and could we go over that? So I wanted to give you an opportunity. Let's just talk a little bit on meets and bounds.
So we have the same ending point and the same beginning point, right? With meets and bounds, we're going to kind of, like, if I went out in my yard and I walked off the perimeter of my property and I described it, I go 300 feet to the covered bridge. Not that there's really a covered bridge, but 300 feet to the covered bridge. Then I make a 45-degree turn and go another 50 feet to the edge of Smith Road. And I'm literally describing what I see. And I do a complete circle and close the whole radius, right? I close the whole circle.
It's a perimeter. It's a perimeter.
Outside.
You're basically drawing out the perimeter of the property. It's almost like a pair of scissors. So you're cutting out the perimeter, and then what you have left, that is the actual property. And then there's always the vocab word, point of beginning, where you started, and then you've got to go all the way back to that point of beginning.
And what about to the stakes? If you guys live in an area that does meets and bounds a lot, you might have seen the metal stakes that they put out to mark the edges of the property lines, right? Metal stakes in the ground. That's more of a New England thing, but I've seen them around here before. And then they go around and they kind of scan it with a little metal detector thing. That's what that's for. That's for the meets and bounds. And so what about, who would we call out if we wanted to figure out where our property lines are? Whose job is it to tell us about property lines? To determine the edge and boundaries of our property would be whom? I'll give him a second since it's lagging again.
And Vanessa, while we're waiting for that answer, you're asking if we could go over laws and regulations. Not in this course, because it's a national one, and everybody's laws and regulations are different. I mean, there are some national laws like the Federal Fair Housing Act and, the lead-based paint Reduction Act. Those are going to be national, but for the most part, your laws and regulations are state specific. And you all, I see it in the chat. You're absolutely right. It is the surveyor. The surveyor is the person who comes out and actually gives a meets and bounds answer. They start at a point and they close it off. They say, hey, I'm going this distance and direction until they get to a boundary, one of those metal stakes, and then they go to another distance and direction until they get to a boundary, and there you go.
All right, so next we have a contract formed by an exchange of promises. Is it an executed contract, a bilateral contract, an executory contract, or how was I supposed to say it, Candace? How do you say it?
Now you
I would say executory contract, but I know in my accent I'm probably saying wrong. Unilateral contract. Which one is it? Which one is it that we have that exchange of promises, right? We're exchanging promises with each other.
I always say it's an executory.
Executory. Everybody says that one a little different.
Nobody's getting any points for getting the pronunciation right on that. All right, we got lots of these.
Bilateral. Yeah.
Bilateral.
Candace, throw us an example of a bilateral contract.
I think a great bilateral contract is when it says, hey, if it's a sales contract, if I give you $500, you promise to give me your house. Now, I'm really hoping that you're paying more than $500. Let's say it might be $500,000. I made a promise to give you $500,000, and you made a promise to give me the deed to the house. 2 promises. Versus a unilateral contract, which I think the best one is a reward. That is the best example. Because if my dog is lost, I make the promise that I will pay a reward. But you did not promise to find my dog. I made a promise to pay the person that found my dog. You did not promise to find my dog. It's unilateral. Only one of us made a promise. I promised to do something in return for an action that you're doing.
Okay, and what about real estate contracts? When you said that, it reminded me. Real estate contracts that would be unilateral that you might see on your test. Open listing and option agreement, right?
Open listing and options. Lydia, you said, will we be covering any math tonight? No math tonight. No math.
But we might, if we have enough time, we might do the amortization table. I have one that we can pull up if we have time. We'll see how we go.
And Lydia, I will say, I will put in here, if you look me up on YouTube, look me up. I have a video on the amortization table and how to do the math and how it all works. So you can always find a video on that if we don't get to it tonight.
Okay, let's see. We just did that one. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. The original price of a property used to calculate capital gains, impound price, shelter cost, market price, or unadjusted cost basis. Which one would it be?
Do. Hey, you ever notice some of these words are in caps and it drives me batty? It's like they're yelling.
Yeah.
It's like they're yelling at you. What is the answer? Like, okay, calm down. And it is the unadjusted cost basis. Very good, Vanessa. Very
unadjusted
good.
Cost basis. Now let's talk a little bit about capital gains. So anybody remember, if I am selling my personal residence, my actual home, not an investment property, and I'm a single person, filing my taxes as a single person, how much profit am I allowed to make and not be charged capital gains on that? Anybody remember that number? Yeah, John, a lot of them are pretty tricky. Yeah, definitely focus on your vocabulary on those. So yeah, it's 250,000 is the amount of profit if you're single,
and
if
500,000 if you are married and filing jointly.
Yeah, I was just typing that real quick too. Here we go.
And
all right,
John,
awesome.
You hit it right on none of the questions on any site, PrepAgent, CompuCram, night before the exam, books, none of them will be exactly the same. And I wouldn't say they're trying to trick you. They're just trying to get you to make sure you know the details. The devil is in the details for this exam. So there you go.
Any kind of burden on the property: lien, easement, fixture, or encumbrance. Lien, easement, fixture, or encumbrances. This is any kind of burden on the property. Remember? What do we think? Yeah, very good. An encumbrance. So let's talk about the things on this page even that are encumbrances, right? We've got liens. They're encumbering me because I owe somebody money. We've got an easement. That's encumbering me because I have to let somebody use my property if I'm granting them an easement. What's another one, Candyce? Let's see.
Encroachments.
Yes, encroachments. Yeah.
Restrictive covenants.
Speaking of, I saw another question that was along this line. Hang on one second. Let me get rid of
y'all getting the right answer, D, with encumbrance. I like it.
Exactly. Oh, we already did that one. Let's do this one. Oh, here's a good one. I'll let you read this one, Candyce, real quick while I am letting Butters out real quick.
Oh, Butters is her dog, y'all, and it's my favorite name.
And he's making a lot of noise, so he needs to leave the room.
So, a popular term, or term popular in urban renewal, referring to a rundown area. So it's just asking us, what is this? What is a term that is popular in urban renewal, referring to a rundown area? Is it blighted area? Is it regression? Is it avulsion? Or is it obsolescence?
He's making so much noise.
All right, we got A's. Carrie's giving me an A. Sarah's giving me an A. Nancy's giving me an A. Hey, Tyrone, I know I said it earlier, but hey, right? So we got A's. Now, I can't change the screen, but Marie, oh, she's back.
I'm back.
For you. They told us it was A. Oh, wait, it just changed. What did you just do? Okay.
All right, sorry. Hold on one second. I was clicking. Contract formed by an exchange of promises.
We were in the middle of
oh, here we go.
There we go.
That is our blighted area. Blighted area. Sorry, guys. Blighted area. They all got that one, though, right? Everybody kind of got that one. Let me see if I can find a trickier one. Oh, here's a better one. State laws requiring certain contracts to be in writing. Statute of scribe, statute of frauds, statute of writing, or statute of limitations. I never noticed that all caps thing, Candyce, until you just mentioned that. Now I'm like, oh, I do notice that.
You're welcome.
I totally missed that before.
It definitely gets on my nerves the caps. And when we finish this question, Julianne had a question that we need to come back to.
Okay. So statute of frauds says that certain contracts, real estate contracts, have to be in writing to be enforceable. So in other words, if we want to go to court and enforce a contract, we have to have it in writing if it's a real estate contract other than a short-term lease, right? In order for the judge to enforce it. Kandyce, you want to do statute of limitations?
So the statute of limitations, I know you all have seen this on a TV show where somebody is robbed or God forbid, if you're a big fan of Law and Order SVU, some child was molested, but they were too old to press charges. That's the statute of limitations. If somebody does something to you today, you can't 100 years from now be like, what about that time that you did XYZ? One difference to that is murder. It doesn't matter how long ago you murdered somebody, you can go down. But the statute of limitations puts a time limit on how long you can be charged on a crime. And before we go further, let's go back to the question. And then Tiffany asked us if we could go over the words in the last question.
Oh, you know what? I do not have that one anymore. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. But let's go back to the question that Julianne asked, which is cost basis and unadjusted cost basis the same? They are similar, but they are not the same. At the end of the day, your unadjusted basis means we're only talking about the money it took to purchase the property, right? Before you adjusted, what did it take you to get that property? How much was the sales price? What did it cost in closing costs? But when we're talking about your what do we use?
Adjusted cost basis.
Adjusted cost basis, but you're trying to find, what are we trying to find? The word that you're paying tax on.
Adjusted cost basis is basically where we're trying to figure out what are your big ticket projects that you did, that you invested in this property, that you're not going to earn back as profit, right? So if you bought a house for $200,000, that's your unadjusted cost basis. But if you spent $100,000 in capital improvements, then your adjusted cost basis would be $300,000 because you had to spend $200,000 to buy the property, another $100,000 in big time improvements. So when you go to sell the property, they're not going to calculate your capital gains tax off of that $200,000 that you originally purchased it for. They're going to give you credit for the money that you invested, and then the difference between the adjusted cost basis and the actual sales price is going to be what you'll pay the capital gains on.
Yep.
Like your resale, your profit.
Capital gains was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay, yeah. So that's the difference. Your unadjusted cost basis is when we don't take into account your capital improvements, your big improvements. And one thing that's confusing, I think, to people is that doesn't mean like painting the walls. We're talking about major overhaul, big ticket items, HVAC system, roof, that kind of thing. Another thing that's only when we're talking about investment properties do we start getting into always paying capital gains. If it's an investment property, we're always going to pay capital gains on our profits. When we only have that loophole to get out of some of that capital gains when it's an owner-occupied property too. All right, next question, common ownership.
Oh, wait, we had a question in the chat before we go to another one. Elizabeth asked if we could explain a reverse mortgage.
Okay. So you want to do that one? You want me to? I don't know.
Sure. So the reverse mortgage, if we think of a mortgage in general, just using it incorrectly, you pay money to the bank every month because you borrowed money. The day of closing, the bank brought you a check for $400,000 so you could buy the house. And then every month you're paying them back that money. A reverse mortgage is opposite. In a reverse mortgage, every month the bank is giving you a check. Why would they be giving you a check? One, because you're older. And I mean old as an old person, I say that, but it's over 65?
62, I think.
62. You're right. It is 62.
Yeah.
If
it's
you're over
60, age, yeah.
If you're over 62 and you have equity in your home, well, if you sell your house, where are you going to live to get the equity? Especially with real estate being so expensive. Instead, the bank is writing you a check from your equity every month. Maybe every month you get $2,000. So month one, they give you $2,000. Month two, they give you $2,000. Month three, they give you $2,000. Then after you have passed away and gone, when you're gone, they're going to expect all that money paid back then and there. So your heirs, or whoever the heirs are going to have to come up with that money to pay back the bank. It's reverse. It's going backwards. They pay you instead of you paying them.
Okay, let's see. Was there any other questions on there? Oh, John asked to hear that the national is changing October 1st.
It is.
So I think,
Well,
yeah,
it is and it isn't.
yeah.
If you are a PSI state, supposedly, and I didn't take the test in the last 2 days. All that changed in PSI states is how they order the categories. They've changed how they categorize what you're being tested on. Supposedly, the topic, like what they're testing you on, the content has not changed.
Because
So, yeah.
honestly, it is what it is, guys. I mean, real estate doesn't change. The same test, the national, basically the concepts that we're learning today, I learned those 20 years ago when I first took the test, right? Like
Can
this,
you
yeah,
believe it's 7:30 already?
yeah. So, are you, Candace, do you need to bounce or do you want to do a couple more?
We can do a couple more. I got an 8
Okay.
o'clock, but we can do a couple more.
Okay. And let's see, common ownership of 2 or more units that have been combined to make the value of the new property greater than the values of each individual lot added together. Is that commingling, appurtenance, plottage, or congregation? Now look at this, the new property greater than the values of each individual lot. That's your definition right there.
I do like all the words that are there. Those are all some of my favorite words.
Mm-hmm.
While we're looking at the answers, Felicia said, how can I keep this in my head and understand what I'm studying? Now that is a good question, and it's about how you're studying, Felicia. It's you feeling the same way everybody else is. It's a lot. So I can't give you one answer how you can make it happen, but there's all sorts of different ways to study. That one of those ways will click, and that will be your way to get the answer, like to get it in there. But flashcards is an easy answer. Flashcards help a lot. Oh, what happened to our question?
It was plottage. That answer was
It
plottage.
was plottage.
Yeah, I put that on there. I'm trying to see if it's going to let me show you guys something.
Okay.
Go ahead and keep talking about. Was there any
while
other
she's
questions?
doing that, it's plottage. So, guys, when I think of plottage, I like to think of shoes or a glove. How much are you willing to pay for one glove or one shoe? I mean, it's a shoe. I might pay $15 for it. However, if I have 2 shoes, I'm not willing to just pay $30, $115 for one shoe, $15 for the other shoe. I might be willing to pay $45 for both shoes. Plottage is the idea that 2 individual lots can have their price, but when you put them together, the price as a whole could be higher than just adding the 2 together. So
because if we're just adding the 2 together, remember that's assemblage, right? If it's not taking into account the added value. I don't know if you already said that, but that's all. Yeah, the assemblage is the
assemblage.
adding of the 2 together. The plottage is when we're increasing the value. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I found one. I was like, somebody asked me about amortization. Hopefully you guys can see this. So you guys want to do this question? And Candace, if you need to go, I understand, because Candace has more work to do tonight, another session.
I got a little time before 8.
Okay. Thanks, Tyrone. All right, so Carla makes payments of $850 per month, including 4% interest on a fixed rate, fully amortized 30-year loan. What was the initial amount of her loan? I'm trying to make this bigger so you guys can see it, but it's not working out too good. So Carla's making payments of $850 per month, including 4% interest on a fixed rate, fully amortized 30-year loan. What was the initial amount of her loan? So number one, what does our chart tell us, you guys? The monthly payment per $1,000 on fixed rate, fully amortized loans. I know it's really small. Hopefully you guys can see. Yeah. The monthly payment per $1,000 on fixed rate, fully amortized loans. Because I remember the first time I took my test, I was like, when I took my salesperson test for Ohio, and I saw this chart pop up, I'm like, what the heck is this chart out of nowhere, right? But if you look, the chart tells us what it tells us. Kind of sounded goofy, but you know what I mean. So it tells us the monthly payment for $1,000 on a fixed rate, fully amortized loan. So we've got a 4% interest rate, 30-year loan. Let's run our chart, run our fingers across our chart here. We find 4%. I know it's small. I'll read it off to you guys. We follow over to the 30-year mark. And what do we see? $4 and 77.5 cents. That's the 4% for 30 years. I'm going to put it in the chat too.
So what the chart is telling us is that if you borrow money for 30 years and the bank gives you a 4% interest rate, you're going to pay $4 and let's just call it 77.775. Let's call it 77 cents for every $1,000 you borrow. So if you borrow $1,000, your monthly payment due is $4.77.
Yep.
If you borrow $2,000, then your monthly payment would be, break out with a calculator, 4.775 times 2. Your monthly payment would be $9.55. So for every 1,000 you borrow, your monthly payment will be $4.77.
Now, Carla is paying back $850 a month, though, right? So to get to $850, how many units, how many times do I have to pay you? $4.77.5. This is how I always think of it. If you visualize a bunch of piles of money on my desk, all in the amount of $4.77.5, how many piles of money do I have to hand you to get to $850, right? So I take my $850 payment and I'm going to divide it by the number from my chart, 4.775. Since Kandyce just explained, every time I paid $4.77.5, it represents another $1,000 that I just borrowed, right? So 850 divided by 4.775. What do you guys get? I'll give you a second to do it.
And Grace, while we're waiting for people to put the answer in, how long does it take to get a test date after turning everything in? Well, it depends on your state.
Yeah.
If you're in California, you're going to be waiting a while, about 4 to 6 weeks to even get an ability to make a test date. Other states, like where I am, it only takes a couple of days to a week if they're not backed up. Truly depends on the state you're in.
So, William, you're missing a decimal there, though. Make sure you're taking $850 divided by 4.775. So we should get 178.01. Now, remember, basically what that's telling me is that I am paying $4.77.5 178 times a month. And every time that I pay $4.77.5, what does it represent? $1,000 that I borrowed, because my chart tells me so. Remember the monthly payment per $1,000 on a fixed rate, fully amortized loan. So if I take my 178 times $1,000, what do I got? What was my loan amount initially? What's the answer to this question?
178,000 and what is that? I don't have a calculator. And some extra
$10.47. Yep.
There you go.
Yep. So that is one example of an amortization. When she said that, I would like to go over that one because I think everybody feels like they rush through this description in class. Don't you guys think like they don't really spend a lot of time talking about this in the class at all? At least they didn't in mine.
No, it's a question everybody just about gets, and everybody gets confused, and that sucks because once you understand it, it's an easy peasy point.
Yeah. Just make sure you pay attention to what the chart's telling you. The top description is very important. All right, so I know we got to get going here, but one thing I wanted to point out to you guys, make sure that I just want to say to you, thanks for PrepAgent for letting us do this with you guys. We are going to try to do more of these for the Facebook group as we can, but remember, if you would like to study live with us every day, we do that on PrepAgent. Every day, PrepAgent members can join me, Kandyce, or Stu. And we do those 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So every single day. And if you don't get to watch them live, you can always watch the replay. So that's one of the great things about being part of PrepAgent. One of the great points of PrepAgent that makes it unique is that we do study sessions like this too.
And Dip and Pre asked how to get to my math video. Dip and Pre, just go to a YouTube search.
Hang on, I'll pull up the link real quick.
Okay. And then put in Kandyce Ellis.
Or do you have it, Kandyce?
Or no, if you can do it on the screen, if you just do
I'm going to try real quickly to pull that up.
So, and Dip and Pre, it's going to be a video that talks about amortization explained. I'll have to let me see if I can pull it up quicker.
And you guys will get a copy of today's too.
Yes. So if you have to go, don't worry. We'll put it in the chat for you so that you can do it. Let's see.
Sorry, I'm trying to.
YouTube.
Here we go. That's tax millage. I don't see mill.
Nope, there's gonna be. Boop, 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 boop.
Well, I tell you what, Candace, we will email it out to everybody. When you get me that link, I'll send an email to them with the link to that video.
Oh, give me 2 seconds. Here it is.
Okay.
I've got it. And here I'm putting it in the chat.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, it's in the chat, but we'll also mail it out. And Lamicia, which membership level has the study sessions? All of them.
And then also, Kirsten asked if we do it every night at 7. It depends. We do them at different times, but you'll be able to go to the webinars and sign up for alerts. I usually do mine during the day. Candace usually does hers in the evening.
That's right. That is
okay, cool.
right.
Yeah, if you guys need any private tutoring, you can hit us up. We will send you. We have the link on the video for PrepAgent tutoring and PrepAgent memberships. Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.